Let's talk about buying a Bugatti. How did you go about buying this car? What'd you pay for it? Where'd you find it?
In 2014, I bought my first manual LP640. I put nothing down. I paid $215,000 for it, and I ended up selling it about 2 years later for $350,000. So I made $135,000 on that car, and I was able to buy the worst one on earth for $120,000. And it had been fraudulently reported stolen and crashed by a drunk 15-year-old, and it was rough. But I owned my dream car with a title made for effectively free. I got the same car with a terrible history in the profit margin of the last deal. And I had like a proper existential crisis because most of what I had done professionally was so that I could buy that car. And I was like, well, why do I have to go to work again? Like I've got, a young child and I need to pay my bills and stuff like that. Like I get that I should still work hard, but that had been kind of my biggest why beyond just being able to eat and have shelter. And so shortly after having that car, I actually decided, you know what, like I need another stupid car goal to be able to chase so that I'll work harder. And I was like, I told a friend, I was like, I think I'm going to buy a Bugatti. And now I didn't make I still don't make enough money to reasonably afford the car. But I knew that it was a good goal to chase. And over the years since then, I've tried to buy a bunch of them. I tried to buy Tygas after it got repoed. I tried to buy the one that went to Galveston Bay. I tried to buy, if ever there's a bad one, I'm trying to buy because I can't buy a nice one. And so I came close several times with these crazy finance schemes and all the ways that I could try, but it just never really worked out. And this car popped up a few months ago for sale, and it just had such an amazing backstory with all the celebrities that it had been with. And I'm like, I hadn't ever really thought that I'd get a Grand Sport with the roof that comes off because they're a lot more rare. They've generally been a lot more valuable. But of the 14 U.S. cars that are Grand Sports, there's 6 of them were on the market in the last year. And that is far too many. Generally, if more than 10% of a car are ever on the market, you're going to see a significant value change. And so that number of cars being on the market drove the value of these down $1 million. And it got to where they were actually being advertised for less than the coupes. And I'm like, well, this is awesome. It's newer. You get the updated wheels and taillights and better suspension and stuff. This is perfect. And so I had been offering a lot less than they wanted for a long time. And I finally got them to take the number. And I paid $1.45 million for it. But I had recently sold a blue manual LP640 that I'd kind of accidentally bought on Cars and Bids because I was running the bid up because I had several of them already and I like them to go up in value. But the real end of all my cars going up in value was so that I'd be able to do this. And so, but that car, I paid $705 or $710 for it. But that car represented a long line of trades. And so I bought a 360 for $31,000 and then sold it. And then I bought a $69,000 roof RT12S and sold it for $154,000. Then I bought a $140,000 430 Scuderia, sold it for $190 something. Bought a Paris Hilton's SLR for $185, sold it for $320. Bought a crashed Mercy SV out of Europe that was fixed for $320, sold it for $700, and then I bought this. So I effectively had a $31,000 cost basis in this $700,000 Lamborghini. So I had sold it, and I had sold some other cars that we had for Car Trek and other things like that. And so with some loans and things like that, I think I had like almost $600,000 in equity, and then Premier Financial Services was there for the rest.
How much is your payment on a Bugatti?
It's like 8 and change.
That's not terrible.
Yeah.
Especially when we heard that James was spending $35,000
payment
a month.
And I mean, obviously, James has been wildly successful in doing this, and he's the greatest success case of YouTube car content, and I love it. I can't fathom that. I couldn't pay that. And this is kind of one of these things where I can float it for a while. Something's got to go to be able to continue to do so. But it's one of those things that had always been the right goal, and now I guess I have to figure out what to do next. But it was the right thing to chase and very motivating. And you always, have to wonder, when you meet these heroes, are they actually going to be worth it? Unfortunately, I'd driven a good handful of Bugattis, and I knew that I really, really liked what the cars were. I love the way that James described it relative to the Koenigsegg, because it is just a wildly different experience. The quality in a Bugatti relative to a Pagani, the hypercars from Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, everybody else, it's really, really a well-built car. They are really usable. They're comfortable. It drives like a big Bentley most of the time until you really get into the throttle. And so I really like the way it is. And now they have this stigma, of course, that everything on them is super duper expensive to address, but those people have no idea what it costs to maintain a Koenigsegg, because it's preposterous.
No, it is true, though, that this car is very expensive to maintain. Like, how much is an oil change on a Bugatti?
Well, an oil change is $3,000 to $4,000. Now, an annual service, which has a lot more things, is like $20,000. And there are independents that are getting into the space that are making it less expensive to, do certain things. There's a lot of parts that can fairly easily be rebuilt. My front axles are leaking grease a little bit. I can get those rebuilt rather than buying new ones for $30,000. The tires are still a thing. The tires are $45,000, and mine are a bit old and a bit worn out. What I'm finding at the moment is that a lot of people take them off the cars when they're too old, but not really that old, and they buy new ones because these are owned by far richer people than me. I think I'm the world's poorest Bugatti owner, and I'm very pleased to keep that title. And so there's workarounds for this stuff, but most significantly, I mean, all my cars can be expensive to maintain, but as long as the values trend in the right directions, it eventually offsets it. You may end up having to put a lot of money on a credit card once in a while.
So you think this car is going to be going up in value over what period of time?
I try to be cautious about things like that. I do believe it will go up in value because there are so many people my age that are dreaming about these types of cars. And I think for those of us that are kind of in the Top Gear, Gran Turismo, MTV Cribs, DuPont Registry, generation of car enthusiast, inception, I think we love the Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and things like that. I think the people that are a little bit younger than us are very hypercar obsessed. And I think that the ways that we love Diablos and Mercies and Countaches and things like that, they're going to love Bugattis, Koenigsegg, and Paganis. And so I believe in the next crop of big value jumps, these make a lot of sense. They have spent enough time cheaper than most people think they ought to be, that it is the right recipe. And I have benefited from a willingness to over leverage myself to buy my dream cars, that I have been ahead of the curve enough that they've gone up in value the right ways. And so if you stretch to buy the car you grew up dreaming about, there's a pretty good chance there's a whole cohort of people with the same sentiment about that car, and that you're going to be in a good position value-wise at some point, as long as it's already a little old.
Yeah. Although really quick, before we go into that, even if you think it's a bit overhyped, AI is suddenly everywhere, from self-driving cars, molecular medicine, to business efficiency. If it's not in your industry yet, it's coming fast.
But of course, the problem is that AI requires a ton of speed and computing power, so how can you compete without costs spiraling out of control?
That's why it's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or our sponsor, OCI.
OCI is a blazing fast and secure platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, plus all of your AI and machine learning workloads.
OCI costs 50% less for compute and 80% less for networking, so you're saving a ton of money. Not to mention, thousands of businesses have already upgraded to OCI, including MGM Resorts, Specialized Bikes, and Fireworks AI. And right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half when you move to OCI. This is for new US customers with minimum financial commitment, and the offer ends December 31st, 2024. So see if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/iced. Again, that's oracle.com/iced with the link down below in the description. Thank you so much, Oracle, for sponsoring this podcast. And now let's get back to the episode.